Rockford's home for Classic Rocks, 96.7 The Eagle. Good morning, I'm Double T. Special guest joining me, Steve Gorman, longtime drummer of the Black Crowes, his current project, Trigger Hippy. How you doing today, Steve?
I am well, sir. Despite the early hour, things seem to be lining up quite nicely.
So are you a guy that sleeps in?
No, God, no. I wish. I had kids and I got pets, and nobody wants me to sleep on this planet anymore.
Doing these things early in the morning, it gets you away from all that and away from responsibility, right?
Oh, well, yeah. What are you kidding? I call someone and talk about myself or let the dog out and go clean up the mess in the backyard. This is a joy.
So I want to go back a few years, right around 2014. I heard a song called Rise Up Singing, and the first time I heard it, it just blew me away, and that was off the debut Trigger Hippy album. How did that come about, that whole project?
Trigger Hippy started, Nick Govert, the bassist, and I started jamming in 2004 in Nashville. So this goes back 15 years to when I first moved there. He's one of the first guys I met, and we jammed one night at a club and just connected immediately. Like, we were fast friends, and we were a rhythm section, and that was it, you know, like in a way that really rarely happens. And so Trigger Hippy was a loose collective for a long time, and the only thing that was always there was me and Nick. That was our name for us. Like, you know, this is what we're doing, and we'll always call it Trigger Hippy. And it had a bunch of different people, because in Nashville, you know, we know 100 guitar players, and it would be, hey, Wednesday night, are you available? And the first two guys that said yes, that was Trigger Hippy. That's what it started as.
See, that's cool.
Yeah, it was just great. And then by 2010, 11, we were saying, you know, Nick and I were very much of the mindset of, hey, let's find a real band. Let's do this for real. He's a great songwriter, so we didn't have to wonder about material. We had, you know, a lot of, you know, obviously you have every song ever written as a cover, but we had originals that we really dug. And so we started putting people in place and trying to find like-minded people. And that first album was a great lineup for a band that never decided really to become a full-time band. It was still the loose collective vibe. And we went out and played a lot of shows, but it was pretty clear early on that everybody's schedules and other parts of the other members' careers were just going to keep it from ever fully developing. So when we pulled the plug on that in the summer of 15, Nick and I still wanted to do this. We really believed in our music and said, well, let's just find people that want to make more of a commitment, and they don't have to commit to our vision, but you want to find the right people that you can build one together with, is really the easiest way to explain that. So we took some time and started jamming with various people, and the whole time, it's funny, the older I get, the more patient I get, which sounds counterintuitive, because, you know, you'd think with fewer grains in the sand, in the hourglass, I should be running. But no, I thought, I don't want a square peg, a round hole situation. I'm going to wait, and, you know, we were very much in agreement. Let's just relax, and if the right people show up and we feel like we can really make a kind of a band commitment with, then we'll do it. And if not, that's cool, because we can still record this music and still play together and do. So that's kind of that took a few years, which was all fine, because like I said, everyone's busy. But now that when we found the lineup and made this album, we're ready to go to work now. And so it's the second Trigger Hippy album. It's the first one with an eye towards a real commitment to the future.
I'm talking to Steve Gorman. He's the longtime drummer of the Black Crowes and Trigger Hippy. When you got this solid lineup, what was the time frame of putting this new album together?
We were recording, a couple of those tracks. I think we were writing these songs back in, 2017, 2018 and tracking. But, we had the record finished, I think mixed and mastered at the beginning of this year. But for a variety of reasons, we knew we needed to wait until the fall to release it. So once we got the record back, I guess probably by March, it was important to, just look at what everybody had already in the books and say, well, when is it going to make sense to go? And it turned out to be October, and here we are.
The new album is called Full Circle and Then Some. It's out today. That's got to be pretty darn exciting that the final product is available for everyone.
No, it always is. It's a great thing. Like, and what that means for me is I can stop listening to it now. Every time I make a record, it's like mine, and I listen every day. And the second it's released, it's like it's anybody who has it. It's their record now, and so I don't listen to it anymore.
I started seeing stuff pop up on your social media pages. And I'm like, oh, I was so excited, and then I got an advance copy listening to that, and then it took me back to the first album. So it's been a great road trip into the Trigger Hippy world.
Yeah, fantastic.
And you're taking it on the road. I know you're going to be in Chicago on November 15th at the Beat Kitchen. How long is the tour going to go on?
Well, we've got a couple weeks in November. We've got a couple weeks in December, but next year we're going to get busy. We'll be out in the spring through the summer. Building as it goes. We're not of the mindset to go put 50 shows up and just grind it out in a van. We can pick and choose a little bit more initially as the record builds and we start to get people become more aware of it. So by next summer, I think we'll be really busy, but we're just doing it a week, 2 weeks at a time here and there as we build through the spring.
And are you going to kind of see how it plays out? No real time limit on it for right now?
Well, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's if we've learned anything over these years, if I have, it's it's important to know what you're going to do, but you can't set when you're going to do it and where you're going to do it. You just take the information as it comes back. And then just know that when the bell rings, you come out swinging and do your best.
I'm talking to Steve Gorman, and the cool thing about it too, nowadays, you're not forced to put out a new album 6 months or a year. You can let it kind of organically live its own life.
Absolutely, and then and the goal too would be this record's going to take a while. I mean, we're realist about it. It's going to if it finds a bigger audience, it'll be a while, and we're happy to let that build. And then the goal is to get to the place where we're touring and recording constantly, and where we can put out 3 and 4 songs at a time, anytime we want. That's just kind of where the business has gone. The idea that this album was important to establish, okay, here's a flag in the ground here. Here's the new Trigger Hippy. But from this moment forward, I don't know that we'll continue to make full albums. We might also just do a series of EPs. Or even singles, if once a month we put a new song out, that works too, if that's what makes people happy.
And I think the fans will like that, to be able to get that.
Yeah, of course.
And, it's hard to get new music. There's not a lot of stores out there anymore, so a lot of people have Apple Music or stuff like that. And to be able to grab that right away without even leaving your house, it's kind of nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm talking to Steve Gorman from Trigger Hippy. The new album, Full Circle and Then Some, is out now, and they'll be at the Beat Kitchen in Chicago on November 15th. But you've been busy with other things, too. You wrote a book.
I did.
Writing music, recording music, that's hard enough. But now going into the world of writing a book, what was that like?
Well, I like to write. So, the actual nuts and bolts of it was fun for me. I mean, I'm very content to sit with a laptop for 9 hours and go into a tunnel. The process of figuring out exactly what the narrative arc will be, if you will. I wrote it with my buddy Stephen Hayden, who's a music writer. And I called him and said, hey, I need to write a book. And he said, yeah. And I go, well, I know how to write, but I don't know how to produce a book. Like, I can produce an album, but how do you produce a book? What's the process? And he said, well, I've never done a memoir either. Let's figure it out together. So he was just a guiding hand. He helped me put it down ahead of time. Like, we did the Cliff Notes first. We went in reverse. Like, let's just do a rough, really streamlined sketch of what is important. What stories, I knew what the narrative was. I knew what I was trying to get across. The question was, which stories do I tell that best illuminate the themes, if you will? Because I have so many stories. And so, I wrote almost 1,000 pages, and Stephen was great because he could read it and then go, hey, you tell this story, you tell the same story 7 times, but with different names and places. But thematically, it's the same story. And he just helped me to get that distance from the material. And then, we whittled the book down together to make it what is now out in stores and released. And so, I always say, like, I wrote the songs, but he produced the album, how that worked. And I could have done it without him. It would have taken 10 years and it probably would have sucked. So, like I was, if I did anything right, it was asking him to help me because I trusted his sensibility, and it worked that we found a really good partnership.
I'm talking to Steve Gorman. His new book is Hard to Handle: The Life and Death of the Black Crowes, a memoir. Of course, I'm sure there are tons of great stories with the Black Crowes and kind of a storied history between the brothers. Where does that put you in the world of the Black Crowes between Chris and Rich Robinson?
Well, I mean, the Black Crowes were always my band, is how I saw it. Like the way that they, in their world, and as Chris doing the vast majority of interviews and being the singer, the average person looks at it and goes, oh, that's Chris Robinson's band. I was the one, and when I say it was my band, I mean equally. Like there was, the simplest way to put it is, there were conversations where the brothers were fighting over, it's mine, I get to do this, and no, it's mine. And I would look at them and go, guys, it's ours. This is not yours, and it's not yours, and it's not mine. This is ours. We are supposed to be a team. And those words literally, they didn't have a fundamental understanding of what that meant. And they both confused, like in the simplest way, if the quarterback suddenly decides he's also the offensive coordinator, you got problems. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
You're the singer, and you're the guy talking to the audience. That's your job. Like you don't get bonus points for doing what frontmen do. If I drop a beat, the whole song sucks. I'm not asking for extra points for doing my job. There was a lot of those kind of issues. A lot of, insecurities and egos fuel ambition almost always in all walks of life. I mean, the most ambitious people are in many, many, many times the most flawed individually. So we were a band that had an awful lot of strengths and we had an awful lot of weaknesses, and we oftentimes couldn't tell the difference.
And I think you could tell a lot from a person if they use we or me. There's a big difference, just like you said.
Well, and that's very true. It's very simple, and it's very true.
I remember when the Black Crowes came out, and my friends and I seeing like the video on MTV and stuff, and hearing the song on the radio, and we were blown away because it was like nothing that we had ever heard before. We're like, what is this? Yeah. This is really cool. Where did that come from?
It just, we were a product of like any band, of the records we loved growing up. We loved 70s big arena rock, and then we were inspired and motivated to do it ourselves by 80s indie rock in clubs. Mostly Southern independent rock bands of the early 80s is what, those, you could be a Beatles fan and a Doors fan and a Zeppelin fan and an Aerosmith fan in the 70s, but those bands don't inspire you to do it yourself because they're so far away. By the time we were all in high school and college, you start going into clubs, and I'm seeing REM in a club and the Replacements in a club, and thinking, oh well, hell, I could do that. It's like you just. The thing that really inspired all of us was a very different scene. So we were kind of a mix of those two worlds.
I'm talking to Steve Gorman. He's the drummer of Trigger Hippy and the Black Crowes. And I know you're a longtime sports fan. Do you still have your radio show?
No, I pulled that about a year ago. I had to finish a record and a book. I had things going on. And I'm still very much a fan, and I'm very thrilled not to be a sports talk radio host anymore.
I know
that ran its ground.
That's a tough world to live in.
Yeah, it was. It was all great. I had 8 years of it and really enjoyed it, but it was just time to get on to the next things. And I'm sorry to say, I have to get on with it, man.
Okay,
I'm
buddy.
Up against the clock here.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Check out the new album. It's now out from Trigger Hippy. It's Steve Gorman, Rockford's home for classic rock, 96.7 The Eagle.